We're on number 47 in your geometry review, and I'm going to try to make this quick. If there's actually a secondary recording as well that I had done before. But you've got this glass window composed of a rectangle. You can see the measurements of it, and the semicircle. If the area of the semicircle region is 1/3 of the total area of the window, okay, what is the ratio of the window? So essentially it's saying this semicircle shape, if you divided the area just by a bar model into thirds, the semicircle is 1/3, and that means the rectangle is 2/3. Okay, so you can set up an equality, an equation a couple of different ways. You could either say that 2 semicircles, okay, equals 1 of the rectangles, or you could say 1/2 of a rectangle is equal to, so 1/2 of one of those rectangles, because if you notice, and this is semicircle that I'm coloring in pink, okay, you could either say that 2 of those pinks equals 1 of the double box of white, or you could say 1/2 of the double box of white is equal to 1 semicircle. And it doesn't matter which one you do, but that's how this particular proportion works. So you know you're going to need to figure out the area of the rectangle and the area of the semicircle. So first of all, I know that the area of a circle is pi r squared. All right, but this is a semicircle, so you're going to have to divide that by 2. Furthermore, everything you're doing here is in terms of h and d. You don't want to introduce a third variable into this equation. So how we're going to do that is, rather than write pi r squared, we know that radius is 1/2 the diameter. So we're going to rewrite this. Instead of with the radius or r, we're going to remember that the radius is the same exact thing as diameter divided by 2. Okay, now this is some pretty complicated fractions, but here's the thing. Anytime I've got like pi over 2, if I want, I can pull that 1/2 out to the front. So this right here, there's an imaginary 1 right here, the line in the half right there. I'm going to pull it forward to be 1/2 right here. It's the same exact thing, but it gets it out of the way temporarily so that I don't have a fraction on the numerators, in the numerators, which is within a fraction. So I don't have to deal with a fraction within a fraction right now. So then I do diameter squared and 2 squared. So that would be diameter squared 2 squared is 4, which means that the area of the semicircle, if I were to simplify it, and remember the pi is over 1, and so I pick up all of my numerators, 1 times pi times d squared would be equal to d squared pi, or pi d squared is how I'm going to write it, over then all of my denominators. 2 times 1 times 4 is 8. So the circular region that I talked about, it has an area that I just calculated to be pi d squared over 8. Hold on, pi d squared over 8. Now then, the rectangular region. The rectangular region's area is going to be h times d. So hd. Okay, and each one of these is hd over 2, hd over 2. So if you want, you can say that pi d squared over 8 equals hd over 2. Or you could say that 2 pi d squared over 8 equals 1 hd. So I'm going to do this one. Well, I'll erase this one just so I'll have some space. I'm going to do, so let's say that 2 times my pi d squared over 8, 2 of those would give me the exact same quantity as 1 of the entire rectangle, and the entire rectangle is hd. So now I'm just going to simplify. 2 goes into 2 once, 2 goes into 8 4 times. So I've got pi d squared over 4 equals hd, and I want to divide by d. because I want to get h all alone. If you're dividing a fraction by d, you can just put it right there in the denominator. It's the same thing. So d goes into d squared, 1d. By the way, I would never be able to do that unless I knew 100% that d cannot be 0. And because d represents a diameter that actually is real and exists, then I know that I can, because you can't have a diameter that has no length at all. So the diameter would never be 0, which is why I was able to do that. If there was any possible way in this scenario that d could be 0, I could not divide by d, because d, if you divide it by 0, you would get an undefined response, or an undefined answer. All right, so let's see. You've got h on the right side, and on the left side, I'm going to have pi d over 4. So here's what I've got. What is the relationship between h and d is what it wants me to do, or it wants this ratio, h colon d. Well, first of all, d is just d, and I know that h is the same thing as pi d over 4. And you can treat these very much like equations. Pi d over 4, if you have a ratio like this, if you multiply both sides by that 4, that's the same thing as pi d, how pi d compares to 4d. Furthermore, you can divide both sides by d. If you divided both sides by d, and remember you can only do that because you know it's not going to be 0, that would give you pi to 4, because they would cancel there and cancel there. So the answer to this one is pi to 4, that's C.